I now have the pleasure of introducing yet another inspirational young woman. As a business student at the University of Khartoum, she has become a prominent gender and youth advocate, focusing on gender-based violence within our communities. Her work as a project officer at a dealer for culture and arts, as well as becoming a 2022 Kofi Annan changemaker, has allowed her to become a prominent voice within peacemaking, and I, for one, am excited to have her here today. Please welcome the amazing Samar Abushama.
I come from Khartoum, Sudan, and I'm very excited to be here with you guys. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yes, you're absolutely welcome. It's an honor to have you here with us. So I'd like to begin by asking you what the issue you are most concerned about is and why we're hearing from you today.
Sudan, but I come from a country that has long suffered from conflict and political unrest. And the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing is that I've basically been interested in understanding the intersectional nature of peace and conflict and how it affects women and youth differently when it comes to militarization of youth, when it comes to the disproportionate gender responsibilities that fall on women's shoulders in areas of conflict and political unrest. And in areas of conflict, which has proven to be systematic throughout the years of conflict in Sudan, where women have been specifically targeted using basically gender-based violence as a weapon of war and conflict.
Really, really inspiring to hear about. And I mean, I'd love, and I'm sure the audience would love as well, if you could tell us more about your story specifically and how you're trying to do something about this issue.
Okay, the thing about Sudan is that for a very long time, the media has been very much monopolized by certain entities which are not necessarily keen on telling the real story of what's happening in conflict zones. So I'm pretty much focusing on telling stories because I do believe that stories and narratives are very important to reflect realities of women and youth who are in conflict zones. So I'm working on a digital platform that tells the stories of daily life activities that they face is important, and to not limit those people within the violation, but instead to look at them as life stories, and then those things happen.
Yeah, and that is really, really important work that you're doing, especially as a young person and as a fellow changemaker. I can understand just how difficult it must be. So I guess a good question here is, how can the people watching at home, fellow young people as well, how can they help you in the cause that you are fighting for?
Okay, I do believe that we're in a situation, or we're in an era where we can connect properly, and we can lead globalized approaches for advocacy, which is, I think, something that we're still not doing great in. So I do think that we should take responsibility in looking at ourselves as global advocates, to be more empathetic towards issues that are happening. So I do think we can definitely support each other in that. I do think that we should also put effort in creating safe spaces, which is also something that I'm very passionate about working in, because for issues to be addressed, they need to be talked about, and for them to be talked about, they need to be addressed in safe spaces. So I do think that we can work more in creating cross-border safe spaces that address the issues of women and youth, that address, as my colleague spoke, about climate justice and so on.
Yeah, no, you cover very good points there, especially regarding the safe spaces. Completely understand what you're saying. And I think a good question here, we've addressed how youth can help and how they can get involved. And a question that's really on my heart is, given the urgent situation that we face, how do you feel about the actions of those in positions of power? And what's your assessment of how they are managing the changes required for our survival?
Process doesn't necessarily challenge existing power dynamics and power imbalances. I think that's the issue, and that's where our role becomes, is that we really need to challenge the existing power dynamics in order to seek sustainable change, basically, and impact for women and youth in conflict zones. The wish that I think I would really want to see is the safety of women, definitely the safety, physical, emotional, psychological, and economic, to fight for it and to ask for it, basically.
Yeah, no, that is incredible. And I think you're right about addressing those specific issues and things. And I mean, on a personal level, once again, change maker to change maker, I'd love to know for you in the next year or the next few years coming up, what are those projects that you are really, really hoping that you can champion forward?
Okay, one thing that I'm really, really excited about is, as I said, storytelling. I focus on storytelling as a form of documentation for what's happening in conflict zones in Sudan. So I do think that in Sudan, because of the revolution happening and because of the youth movement that's challenging the political systems in Sudan, it's about time we work properly on transitional justice, and specifically the part of transitional justice related to memorialization. So I do think that I want to focus on telling those stories in a context, on a more basically holistic context that tells the atrocities that happened in conflict zones in Sudan, the dates, how they looked, and to make sure that those things don't go unseen, don't go forgotten, and that they remain archived for generations to see, to acknowledge, and to learn from.
Yeah, no, no, I see what you're saying there. And I think something else, if we put the work aside for a moment, I think other young people watching who are also doing advocacy work would love to know, those especially who look up to you, how do you look after yourself? How do you get through things like burnout? How do you keep on going? How is your mental well being? How are you doing? Tell us, please.
I mean, yeah, this is a really interesting question. I think it's very difficult. I think it's very difficult to for one to look after their well-being in such circumstances, and especially when you're in a country where there is political unrest, the public spaces are not safe. You're constantly worried about your loved ones, your friends, your colleagues who might be hurt. I think I spoke about safe spaces earlier. I think when like positioning those safe spaces within our personal lives is also important. It's not just about creating safe spaces for others, but also creating safe spaces for yourself, with friends, with people who you trust, with people who you think are empathetic towards what's happening with you. I think this is how I'm managing most of the times. I have access to these safe spaces who I seek when I need them, and I constantly do need them, actually.
Yeah, yeah, no, I understand that. I think a lot of us need them, and you're right to be championing safe spaces because they are really important and vital, especially in advocacy spaces. And I'd love to end on this one question, and I'd love to hear your answer on it. But if you had one wish to make something happen in relation to humanity's survival right now, what would it be?
Okay, I think I might have answered that question earlier because of my connection issues, but yeah, I definitely like the one thing that I'm really passionate about. I would want to see when I wake up is the safety of women, physical, emotional, psychosocial, and economic safety of women.
Yeah, no, that is a beautiful way to summarize it. And I'm so glad that we got to hear your wonderful thoughts and learn more about your inspirational work. Thank you so, so much. Thank you once again, Samar Abushama, for speaking with us today and for your support.